I will never forget where I came from, and I will never forget the great people of Ohio.
I have the privilege to concede this race to J.D. Vance.
I'm not going to stand here and sugarcoat things. I'm disappointed.
We have work to do. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to lead you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that work.
The people of Ohio have spoken loud and clear.
With this campaign behind us, I promise I will live in the present.
Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. The election is over, and now we are hearing from the newly elected and re-elected leaders of Ohio. Let's start with the biggest race in the state, a race watched closely by the entire nation for a seat in the U.S. Senate. Political newcomer J.D. Vance beat Democrat Tim Ryan. 10 TV's Kevin Landers asked Vance 2 days after his win if he plans to work with Democrats in the Senate.
I plan to work with anybody with whom I can get things done. I think certainly on things like trade policy, on bringing manufacturing jobs back to Ohio, Sherrod could be a good ally. On energy policy, hopefully Joe Manchin will be a good ally. So certainly, look, the way I think about it is the people of Ohio sent me to the United States Senate to do a job, and I plan to do it, and I'll work with whoever I have to get that done. I bring a different perspective, having grown up in the business world, having achieved something in the private sector. So I think it's actually an asset to send people to Washington with a fresh perspective. I'll have to learn a lot on the fly, but I've been pretty good at doing that. And again, the goal here is to get things done. And I think wherever you are, you need to be the kind of person that gets things done. And that's certainly what I plan to be. I don't worry about one-party rule right now because that's not what we have. However the Senate ultimately shakes out, we have a divided government. We have a Republican House, a Republican Speaker, a Democratic President. And whether you have 51 Republicans or 51 Democrats or 50, we have divided government in this country. And so for us to solve problems, we're going to have to find a way to work around that.
Here was Vance's response when asked what his first priority will be once he's in office.
We do have a terrible border problem. The fentanyl is going to kill a lot of people unless we stop it. It's already killed a lot of people, and I think that we have to stop it as much as we can. And then, really, we have to get the prices under control. The inflation seems to have come down a little bit. It's still way too high. It's still at historic highs. And I think a big part of that is actually opening up our energy, our refining markets, and our pipelines to bring down the cost of gas, the cost of utilities, and the cost, consequently, of everything else.
J.D. Vance was considered a MAGA candidate who had the support of the former president. But what will that mean once he takes office? 10 TV's Brittany Bailey looks to answer that question.
Ohio's next United States Senator, J.D. Vance!
It was the cap of what amounted to a sweep for the top Ohio candidates on the Republican ticket in the midterms.
We've had a good night in the Ohio Republican Party, haven't we? Wow.
J.D. Vance is set to become Ohio's next senator, filling Rob Portman's seat. And he had a message of unity, promising to work for all Ohioans.
What we need to do over the next couple of years, over the next 6 years, for the full length of this Senate term, whoever's in the majority, whatever the president looks like, we have a very simple job to do. It's to go to work every single day and fight for the people of Ohio.
But this speech felt like a bit of a departure, more subdued and without many of the talking points made popular by former President Donald Trump. So does that mean he will be a different senator than he was a candidate? We asked a local Republican consultant.
When you go to the Senate and you represent a very diverse and big state like Ohio, you've got to shift and understand the middle. And again, what a candidate has to do in a primary, Democrat or Republican, is different than what you do in the general and when you're in office. And he's clearly got 6 years, so he's got time to prove himself and that he'll represent and work hard for the state of Ohio.
And while the red wave splashed through Ohio and a few other states, it wasn't the washout some had predicted across the country. Notably, while Vance thanked Governor DeWine and others in his victory speech, there was no mention of the former president.
Do you think that the results from this election so far have proven that maybe
President Trump is losing a bit of his luster when it comes to his support for candidates?
The people that don't like him will argue that, but again, it's going to depend on who's going to be the Democrat, because if it's Biden, you get one answer. If it's the California governor, it might be a different matchup and a different result. So we've got a long way to go, as they sometimes say on television, to be continued.
And as Terry Casey went on to say that this was a big win for J.D. Vance because he's a political newcomer with no prior experience in office. Now, in the race for Ohio governor, Mike DeWine won over Democrat challenger Nan Whaley. The race was called not long after the polls closed. 10 TV's Kevin Landers talked with DeWine one-on-one after his win.
You have been criticized heavily by the Dispatch, by your own party, on your stance on abortion and your what they believe is your willingness to go to the far right of your party when in terms of gun legislation. How do you tell voters of Ohio that you're going to be a governor who's going to listen to them about abortion and about gun violence, because those are two issues that really played a large role in this election?
You know, gun violence, we have a bill pending in front of the legislature that will make a huge difference. They'll go after the repeat violent offenders who have guns or aren't supposed to have guns. I mean, these are the people who are killing our 7-year-olds and our 10-year-olds in our neighborhoods. So we have bills that will do that. I'm urging again the legislature to pass that. As far as abortion, the legislature is going to take this up. Once Roe v. Wade was overturned, it goes back to the states. Every state's going through a debate. And what I've said is, look, I'm pro-life. I want to save as many lives as I can. But the legislature also needs to understand that this is a state where we have referendums. And so ultimately the people get to decide and can decide. So they need to pass a bill that really can be sustained over the long run.
Do you ever see a time in your administration where you would have an exception for an abortion?
Look, I think we need to let this work out through the legislative process. But again, basic principles. It needs to be clear. It needs to be able to inform people what the rights are, what they can do, what they can't do, particularly in the medical community. Number two,
in saving the life of the mother, or even in...
Let me just finish the broad parameters, and we'll get to these in time. But broad parameter needs to be clear. Second, it needs to be something that can be sustained by the people. I mean, the legislature has to understand that we can't pass something that just can't be sustained. But those are things I've said. This is nothing new I'm telling you today, and I think this is how we need to approach the debate.
In the race for Ohio Secretary of State, incumbent Frank LaRose was reelected. He beat his challenger, Chelsea Clark, by more than 20%. In his victory speech, he talked about the importance of election security.
We believe that we should remove deceased voters from the voter rolls, and we believe that we should make sure that only citizens vote in our elections, and we believe that Ohioans should have honest elections, and that's exactly what we deliver.
And in the race for Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice, Sharon Kennedy came out on top.
And my promise to every Ohioan is that we will begin every endeavor and every initiative working from one question: will it be better for the people that we serve? To those families, community leaders, and people who have shared concerns that access to their courts and the ability to have a timely hearing has been denied, I have heard you. And I agree with you. In the words of the British Prime Minister Gladstone, justice delayed is justice denied.
Kennedy went on to promise to bring more transparency to the way the court operates. She also said she would establish a task force to work on society re-entry help for people who serve their time in prison and mentor programs for at-risk children. Justice Pat DeWine, who's Governor Mike DeWine's son, was reelected to his seat.
I'm confident that because of what the voters have done today, we're going to have an Ohio Supreme Court that does exactly what it's supposed to. That is, protects the rule of law, applies the laws as written, doesn't legislate from the bench, and by applying the laws as written, makes sure that everyone gets treated the same and fairly under the law.
Justice Pat Fisher was also reelected over Democrat Terry Jamison. Now, you just heard from several Republicans who all won on Tuesday. This week's election results assured the Republican Party will continue to rule the Ohio State House. Ours is among 37 states where one party runs everything. Republicans control 23 states while Democrats control 14. As Kevin Landers explains, a one-party rule is a growing trend in states.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to lead you. Thank you for giving me
Tuesday's election guaranteed Republican control of the state house again. But did democracy suffer as a result?
And what we have in Ohio is really, more of an echo chamber in which, Republicans have had power. They've drawn maps to help keep that power, and they've pretty well done what they want.
One-party rule is great for the ruling party, but others see a lack of balance as a danger.
No elected official at this point is really accountable to what it is that the voters actually want and are demanding, and that is very frightening.
Ohio is one of several states with one party in control, and it's a growing trend.
I am extremely concerned that there is no longer a checks and balances in this state.
17 states had divided governments in 2018. That dropped to 13 in 2020 and is now down to 12, according to the National Conference of State Legislators.
Gerrymandering plays a role in this. When one side gets the ability to draw the maps, they have an excellent chance of being able to sort of perpetuate their power.
Controversy over Ohio's redistricting maps played a significant role in creating divided government. The topic is not lost on newly elected Republican Senator J.D. Vance.
We have divided government in this country, and so for us to solve problems, we're going to have to find a way to work around that.
But is there enough incentive for those in power to reach across the aisle when one party controls the agenda?
90% of Ohioans support universal background checks. That's the highest polling issue I've ever seen in Ohio, 90%. And they get policies that go in the absolute opposite direction. And
Are we creating a system where I don't have to listen to you?
Well, the short answer is yes. For Democrats in the Ohio legislature, their numbers are so small and the procedures of the Ohio legislature are such that they're functionally irrelevant.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
And Vance tells 10 TV he plans to work with Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown on issues like trade policy and bringing manufacturing jobs back to the Buckeye State. On Tuesday night, Brown sent a statement saying he looks forward to working with everyone who won. Our coverage of the midterm results continues right after the break. The argument behind the newly passed Issue 1 that concerns public safety. New buildings, renovations, and more resources are in store for several school districts after a successful election night victory. And those weren't the only levies to pass.
4 times the charm, right?
Why Franklin Township Police Department staffing concerns aren't over, even though funding is no longer an issue. The 2 statewide issues on the ballot passed. We're talking about Issue 1 and 2. 1 focused on how changing cash bail is set. Although the majority voted yes, there was some opposition. Here's 10 TV's Kiana Dyches.
We're pleased that we have another tool in the toolkit.
Janet Grubb is a former judge who set bond amounts for 18 years.
During that period of time, safety of the community was always an element that was unspoken, but was part of the stew.
But in January, the Ohio Supreme Court blocked a court from setting excessive bail, saying it's unconstitutional when the amount is higher than necessary to make sure the accused person will return to court.
That created a lot of issues for us because when a judge looks at what bail bond to set in a very serious matter, it's almost impossible not to take that extra step.
She says the amendment will keep dangerous criminals off the street.
We have a lot of people that are reoffending, committing serious offenses one after the other, many times while out on a bond.
But people like Patrick Higgins with the ACLU say that isn't true.
We think it's bad policy. We think that our state already has an over-reliance on cash bail. that doesn't keep our public safe, hasn't in the past and won't in the future.
Courts are now required to consider a person's criminal record, public safety, and the likelihood the defendant will return to court when setting bail. Higgins says it'll unfairly impact people of color.
We don't think wealth is a determining factor when it comes to things like morality, when it comes to a person's danger to their community. It's disappointing to think about the people who are still going to be sitting in jail cells in Ohio because of the amount of money in their wallet.
The ACLU says Ohio still needs bail reform. They plan to fight against Issue 1 with a House bill and a Senate bill, which would both set cash bail based on a person's income. Now, Issue 2 passed with a strong majority as well. That measure ensures that only U.S. citizens who have been a legal resident and registered voter for at least 30 days can vote in Ohio elections. It also makes it so that 17-year-olds who will be 18 on Election Day cannot vote in primary elections. Now, when it comes to school levies, a majority of them passed this week. You're looking at a few of them. These levies will ensure that some districts can build new schools, avoid virtual learning, and provide more resources for teachers. 10 TV's Ashley Bornanson spoke with several of those districts to find out what changes voters can expect.
We just wanted to support the schools, whatever they need.
Worthington parent Scott Teresi says his family moved to Worthington to raise their kids in the school district. As a child to 2 teachers himself, he says he's happy the levies passed.
Where I grew up, it was a struggle a lot of times in a small town to pass those levies.
Worthington schools passed their bond issue and operating levy with a 61% majority. The money will allow the district to rebuild Thomas Worthington High School. Meanwhile, in New Albany Plain, residents say they are thrilled.
It was amazing. It was truly amazing.
The majority of residents voted for the renewal levy, Issue 4, to maintain and replace school infrastructure with 25-year-old buildings.
Everyone knows that the teachers work hard and they need a little extra help.
We're all about trying to provide the best academic and developmental outcomes. And part of that is making sure we've got great campus facilities for our students every day.
This includes funds for building repairs, technology, security upgrades, school bus repairs, and heating and cooling. District taxpayers will see a net tax decrease starting in 2023. In Pickerington, advocates for school bonds, Vote for Pick Kids, are jumping for joy as the $89.9 million bond will help tackle overcrowding in schools by building a new junior high and adding classrooms to both North and Central high schools.
They're just packed, way overpacked. We've had to take lockers out of hall rooms. We're having teachers have to hold classrooms in gymnasiums and in teacher break rooms.
The city will not have to raise the local school tax rate, and taxpayers will actually see a decrease of $500,000.
When it comes to our community, when you look at crime, poverty, homelessness, substance abuse, education is the silver bullet, and we need strong schools to create a strong community and society. And for us in Pickerington, this is the right time with the right place and the right plan.
And that was Ashley Bornanson reporting. The Franklin Township Police levy passed by 151 votes. This means the township can now have a full-time police department. But with several failed levies in the past, officers have left the department fearing layoffs. 10 TV's Lacey Crisp explains how the township plans to rebuild.
Now that the levy has passed, Franklin Township has the tough job of trying to hire officers who've already left.
It's been tough because of is it really going to pass this time?
It's 4th time's the charm for Franklin Township trying to pass a levy to continue to fund its police department. Without the levy, the department would have to eliminate all but 4 officers, operate during business hours, and rely on the Franklin County Sheriff's Office for police protection.
The passage of the levy was the first step. Without it, there was no going forward. But now we have to begin the process of trying to recruit or bring back officers if we can.
Fearing another failed levy, several officers took jobs in other departments. Including the chief, there are currently 8 officers on the department. They are now looking to get back to full staff and have 12 to 13 full-time officers with the addition of 6 part-timers.
Because every department in Franklin County is hiring, and most of them are doing lateral transfers. So we're in competition with every other department. So it is going to be a very hard road to hoe.
Chief Byron Smith says it's a challenge he accepts to serve the township residents.
They're going to have protection now. So we will be able to provide 24/7 protection.
And with this levy being permanent, the township won't have to go back to voters. In Franklin Township, Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.
In an executive session Wednesday, trustees passed a resolution to bring back 3 officers effective immediately. This week, the mayor of Columbus released his plan for 2023, which includes the largest budget in the history of the capital city.
Columbus is once again ready and poised to make unprecedented investments in our neighborhoods.
Mayor Ginther says the total amount comes to $1.1 billion. The mayor still has to present this budget to the city council for approval and public hearings. It won't be finalized until the beginning of 2023. During Election Day, some concerning videos popped up online. They seem to show people being prevented from voting, but the Verify team explains why it's not what it appears. Since Governor Mike DeWine took office, there have been no executions in the state of Ohio. After his re-election this week, WCPO asked him if he will eliminate the death penalty.
Drug companies have made it very clear if we use their drugs for injection, lethal injection, that may risk state hospitals getting any kind of drugs at all from that same company. So we are clearly at a standstill, and I don't see anything that changes that in the immediate future.
This week, DeWine issued a reprieve for 3 death row inmates, pushing back their execution dates until 2026. Misinformation campaigns on social media started early on Election Day, spreading claims of election fraud across the country. Our Verify team was busy sorting through what's real and what's not. Arianda Till gets to the bottom of a claim that Republican voters were turned away at the polls.
On Election Day, this video was posted to Twitter claiming to show a Republican voter being turned away from the polling place. The video appears to show an exchange between the apparent voter and a poll worker.
With this election, you can vote in any precinct.
No, you said the Republican side is not what?
I don't have staff, so we are closed right now.
So for the Democrat, I can vote Democrat then?
You can vote Democrat.
But not Republican.
Not Republican, I'm sorry.
So let's verify. Does this video show a voter being turned away from the polls during Tuesday's midterm election? Our sources are Leah Shaw, spokesperson for the Harris County Election Administrator's Office, and InVid, a video forensics tool. Using InVid, Verify found earlier postings of this video dating back to March 1st, the first day of the 2022 primary elections in Texas. So we can verify, no, this video does not show a voter getting denied during Tuesday's midterms. We can also prove that it isn't evidence of election fraud. Let me show you. For this primary, it was the first time that each political party had to staff their own machines and operations. In Harris County, Texas, there were reports of widespread staffing shortages at polling places. So Verify called Leah Shaw. Shaw confirmed that it was taken at the Hardy Senior Center polling location in Houston. She told Verify that the Democrat side of the election was staffed, but the Republican side wasn't. So if somebody was hoping to vote Republican, they could not vote at that location because the side was closed. They could, however, still vote at other open Republican locations. She called the video misleading and told Verify this is not evidence of any kind of voter fraud. With your Verify, I'm Ariande Till.
And remember, if you have something to verify, let us check it out for you. Send your questions to verify@10tv.com or just reach out to us on social media. We certainly thank you for joining us here on Face the State today, and we wish you a terrific and safe week.